Are there new red flags for Mavericks head coach Jason Kidd being raised after excerpts of a new book show him in a not-so-positive light? This is the gray area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. You can catch me on your home of the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers. 105.3 The Fan. New red flags are being raised about Jason Kidd as the new head coach of the Dallas Mavericks after excerpts of a new book detailing Giannis' journey and improbable rise for an NBA MVP written by Miriam Fader have shown Jason Kidd to be brought out in a very negative light given the experiences that he had during his time as a Brooklyn Net and Milwaukee Buck head coach, specifically his time with the Milwaukee Bucks. Details about how he made his team in the Milwaukee Bucks practice after losing in a particular game just 2 days before Christmas and forcing the Bucks to change their plans and forcing them to practice at 9 a.m. the next day, in essence canceling Christmas, if you will, for the Milwaukee Bucks. Zaza Pachulia, who tried to give a diplomatic answer, who was on the team at the time, said, look, guys have made plans. While we didn't give the kind of effort that we thought we should have in losing this game, it's Christmas. Jason Kidd apparently was having none of it and decided to make the Bucks practice the next day, to the point where Larry Sanders at one point, who didn't know how to swim when Jason Kidd was making him do laps and running in the pool, got physically sick and had to check himself into a hospital. Larry Sanders goes on to say that basically Jason Kidd mind bleeped him. And that is one of the more negative things that you've seen in some of the excerpts of this book. Now, obviously, there's a lot of detail and more context, I'm sure, that will come out as these details continue to be revealed from this particular book. But there are those who have concerns already about Jason Kidd being brought in as the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks, a guy who was 183 and 190 as head coach between his time with the Bucks and his time with the Nets, now being inserted into a roster and an organization that already had some red flags dealing with some of the things other than what was actually happening on the basketball court. Now, new information from this particular book making Jason Kidd and bringing him into yet another negative light. Now, here's the thing. Jason Kidd, who has spent the last couple of years as an assistant with the Los Angeles Lakers, learning under Frank Vogel, has been very candid about the idea that he has been learning and trying to be a better communicator and a better teacher while learning under Frank Vogel, specifically talking about becoming a better listener and understanding how to put game plans together and be a better communicator. Obviously, that will be put to the test because when you have information like this coming out of the excerpts of this particular book detailing the negative light that Jason Kidd is portrayed in, it is concerning if you're a Maverick fan, given the fact that folks had questions about him becoming the head coach anyway, aside from all the off-the-court stuff that already beset him prior to being hired as Dallas Mavericks head coach. Here's what I will say about this. If you do not want to give Jason Kidd the benefit of the doubt, I completely understand that because of the on and off the court troubles, if you will, that Jason Kidd had in terms of his baggage before being hired as the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. If you are one of the ones that wants to give Jason Kidd the benefit of the doubt and say, now let's reserve judgment. He did go to Los Angeles, learn from Frank Vogel under the last couple of years, work with LeBron James. LeBron James and Giannis have both personally vouched for him. Let's see what he does with Luka Doncic, and maybe the third stop is the charm for the NBA basketball and pro basketball Hall of Famer. I understand if you have that particular judgment, but here is where the rub comes in. Did Jason Kidd do anything prior to being hired as the head coach to inspire you to think that he should be the man to get the job in the first place? That is a question that a lot of folks are still trying to answer, and for a lot of them, the answer is no. So when you see information about Jason Kidd making guys practice the day before Christmas and 2 days before Christmas, and guys getting physically sick, and guys saying that they mind bleeped him into doing the things that they actually did in performing for Jason Kidd, on top of the fact that we've already heard reports prior to him being hired as the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks that he was very hypercritical of players at times, cursed players out in very negative ways that denigrated them in terms of how they performed on the floor. And now this information comes to light. It serves again to raise red flags. And if you have those, I could understand why. But for Mavericks fans, this is not necessarily something that alleviates any concerns that you had in hiring Jason Kidd to begin with. And that ultimately is the problem here. There should be no reason why Jason Kidd should provide any kind of distraction given the task at hand for him in coaching a 22-year-old superstar in Luka Doncic, who's on a massive 5-year, $207 million contract that kicks in after this upcoming season, and more importantly, an organization that seems to be in a mode, at least on its face, to try and win basketball games and compete for championships in the very near future. You cannot have the public face of your organization being discussed in these negative ways, and red flags continue to be raised about whether or not he should be the head coach of this team based on the baggage that previously beset him before he be even hired as head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. That ultimately is the problem here. Not that Jason Kidd may not have changed or have grown or have gotten better and maybe matured as a man and as a coach, but the idea that he was the best man for this job is ultimately what comes into question once again when excerpts of a book show him in a negative light the way that these excerpts have. And to have many a player go on record, on and off record, talking about the negativity of Jason Kidd as a head coach, you can only hope, if you're a Mavericks fan, that he has actually changed in the ways that he goes about his business. But again, that ultimately remains to be seen. Again, if you reserve judgment on him, cool. If you don't, and this confirms for you the more skeptical feelings that you had about Jason Kidd being the head coach of this team, I could get with you. But for me, I guess we'll play wait and see here, because again, these things can sometimes be taken out of context, or at times they can be put into their proper context, which apparently excerpts of this book is trying to do for us based on the experiences that players specifically have had with Jason Kidd. And if that's the case, then you might want to have your antennas up a little bit and see how his relationships grow with his players and how you observe the players react to him on a day-to-day basis. We will not know any of this, though, until he actually gets on the floor when it comes to coaching, when it comes to practice, and all the things that we will observe Jason Kidd to be as hopefully a coach, if you're a fan of this team, that has ultimately changed and is a different one from the one that was in Milwaukee and in Brooklyn, where at times had difficulty with power struggles and staged coups to try and get power. I always say this: if someone shows you who they are, believe them. Hopefully for the Jason Kidd-led Dallas Mavericks, he will turn a little bit different stripe and be able to show and alleviate concerns that Mavericks fans may have about his ultimate hiring. I guess you and I will get a front row seat to find out. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. It's been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.